Okay, so I think we're going to get started pretty soon. Before we fully dive in, I want to make sure everybody's audio coming through. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start talking. My name is Bryant McBride. I'm part of the EADI team, the broader EADI team, and I'm specifically a business intelligence developer. I work with Andre and Kenji as well, and there's a few others of us that aren't here today. But I work mostly in the developing of tools, usually you might know them as reports, that people and users will use to further understand data and sometimes operationalize their data. I've been here for about 5 years, a little over 5 years. I initially came and started working on the Workday implementation. We worked for 7 years on the financial side of that. And then after that, I switched over working with Tableau and student data and a little bit of HR, and a little bit of research as well. I am here today to run you guys through a demo that we're going to do. It's kind of a workshop. We are going to, from start to finish, create a couple of sheets in Tableau using these demo data sources that you guys can see. And after we create those sheets, we are going to add them to a dashboard and we're going to publish them. So by the end of the day, you're going to have published maybe your first Tableau dashboard. So one of the first things that I want to do, and if you will follow along, here in the demo folder, if you see this little box right here that says new, if you click that and then click on workbook, that's going to open up a new workbook, and that's what we're going to do today. That's how we're going to create these sheets and this dashboard. And once you've done that, you should see this connect to data pop-up window. If you don't, what you're going to want to do, if this is the page that you've come to, what you're going to want to do is in this toolbar right here, you see this little cylinder and this plus sign, click that. That's going to allow you to connect to a data source. Now, it's unlikely you're going to see all these data sources that I have access to here, but if you see more than you expect, type in Tableau University and hit enter. And then click on enrollment. Okay. Once you've connected to that enrollment data source, we're going to go ahead and publish this, which in Tableau's web edit is essentially the same thing as saving. You don't have an option to save like you might traditionally on another file, but you're going to publish as, and give your workbook a name, and ideally maybe some part of your name, either your initials or your last name or something, just to differentiate it so you can find it once again. I, in the end, am going to call mine, well, actually mine is Tableau Demo, but you can call yours Enrollment Statistics or something of that nature. All three. You should be able to connect to all three. And the place specifically that you're going to actually publish this to, the actual folder within demo, is the sandbox QA. That's where we're going to save these, and that's where you'll actually go in and view once you've published. And then for now, you can leave both of these two boxes unchecked and just hit publish whenever you're ready. And this is good. This sets us up so that for the rest of this, as you work, you can save, publish. as you go. And you just click publish, and it'll essentially save it for you. So now that we're in Tableau's web edit version of Tableau Server, I'm going to take a second to explain what you're looking at here. So if you take a look towards the top here, you're seeing file, data, worksheet, dashboard, plenty of items that you might typically call a toolbar. I'm not going to call them a toolbar, and that is just because right below it, there is what I am going to call the toolbar. You have undo and redo here in the top left. As I already pointed out, you have new data source. You have pause data. From here, you can create a new sheet, a new dashboard, or a new story. Right next to that is duplicate, and then a handful of other things. I would say the most important, though, is going to be undo, redo, connect the data source. Underneath that and on the left side, you have the data panel. Directly underneath the word data, you can see Tableau University enrollment. That's our data source. You can refresh, rename, close. You can do a couple of things in server. There's a little bit more functionality you're going to get if you have Tableau desktop, but we're working with server here. So underneath that, you see all the fields that are within that data source. You can scroll through, and you can kind of get to know these a little bit. Keep in mind, these are all part of a demo data source, so nothing is real here. There's a search box. You can search for something like major, and it will whittle down the fields to those that include the text major. And just to the right of that, there is a downward pointing arrow. There's a lot of downward pointing arrows that we're going to be clicking on today, but this one in particular is what you would use if you're trying to create a calculated field or a parameter. We are not going to be making a parameter today. We will be making a couple of calculated fields. Just to the right of that whole panel, you see pages. Don't really worry about that. You see filters. We're definitely going to be adding some filters here. That's where you would add a field to the filter and narrow down the data coming into the worksheet based on that. Below that, there's the marks card. And this, I'm not really going to go over too much, but you'll see a lot of it in action later on. This is where you mostly mess around with the actual visualization, what you're working on will look like. To the right of that, you see columns up above and rows directly beneath that. This is where you're going to drag these fields over here in what is referred to as the pill shelf over into the columns or into the rows, and that's going to populate data into the worksheet. You can also drag fields directly onto the view, which is right here, this big blank space. But for the most part, to be perfectly accurate, you want to drag them exactly where you want them, i.e. filters, marks, columns, rows, etc. So I think the last thing that I want to show, we're not going to use this today, but when you go off into your own development environment, this show me button can be really useful if you want to potentially change the visualization to something and you're not quite sure how to get it there. If you click on that, right now we don't have any data, but as soon as you add data here, it's going to start showing you different ways it thinks you could visualize that. And if you click on them, it'll automatically swap everything you have to make it look that way. So something to keep in mind. So now that we're a little bit more familiar with the way the interface works and looks, the first thing we're going to do is create a simple list report. So once again, I sent out in the meeting, if you look in the files section, there is a guide that you can follow along with. You can either work directly along with me here, or you can watch, wait. We are going to be giving some time at the end of each task, as I've gone through the task, to let you complete it yourself. So the first thing we're going to do is get used to how to put fields onto a worksheet. So over here, I'm going to look for the ID field. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to drag it over to the rows and release. We're going to give it a moment here. I'm also going to plug my laptop in because it's dying.
Cloud service, it's not.
So now that we've done that, you can see there is now a list of IDs. All of the IDs, the values for the field ID that exist in the data source that we have connected to, have shown up here. If you look in the very bottom left of the window, you see the number 35,000, what is that, 980. So there's almost 36,000 IDs here in this data source, 36,000 students over the course of however many years we've added to these data sources. You can scroll through, you can look at each of them. It's a text field. So now that we've done that, I think what we want to do is add a little bit more detail. We might want to know certain things about these students. So I'm going to grab a handful of fields that I'll list out, but they are mentioned again in the guide. So I'm going to bring admit type description, and I'm just going to drop it directly to the right of ID. I'm going to keep ID as the first field in order from left to right. That's important, which I'll explain in just a minute.
The platform itself.
So here we are, we have 5 more fields in addition to ID that we've added to the view. And what you can see is that each one of these students has a unique value relating to admit type, college name, degree level, major name. This is a great way if you're trying to create a list of any given item, any given data item, and learn more about that data item. This thing that we're creating in particular is going to be called an enrollment list. This is a very simplified version of an enrollment list, but a list all the same. So we have this list, but like we said, this is all of the IDs in the data source. It's kind of a lot, and it really doesn't give us a lot of use here. So one of the things that I want to do is add a way for us to narrow down what we're looking at to a more specific subset. And one of the easiest ways and one of the best ways to do that oftentimes is term, or at least a time frame. And in our case, that's going to be the term. So I'm going to type term in the search box, and I've got 3 here. I'm going to use the actual term because that's what we want to look at. And I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to drop it into the filters this time. When you do that, you're met with a pop-up window here. A lot of what you do in Tableau is going to involve a secondary window that's asking you to specify some things. But here, all we're going to do for now is scroll down to, let's do the current term. We're going to do 2023-08. We're going to hit OK. And now that we've done that, if you look again towards the bottom left, you can see now we've got 5,066 rows, quite a bit smaller. So that's great. We've narrowed down our data that we're looking at to something that maybe is more useful for us, but this isn't something that can be replicated or reused in its current state. What we want is to make this into something that can be interacted with, something that we can change on the fly and reuse in the future, something that we can also look backwards into the past with. So one way to change this, well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. This is basically the end of the first task. Before we finish and wrap this task up, we're going to go down to the bottom here. If you look at this tab where it says Sheet 1, if you double click or right click and select rename, we're going to rename this sheet. And I'm going to call mine enrollment list. All right, and you can see when we did that, it updated the title up here with the name of the sheet. We are going to eventually change that, but for now, it's at least good to know that it will automatically, unless otherwise specified, inherit the name of the sheet. And I think this is a good time to publish what we've done. I'm going to take a break and give everybody maybe 5 minutes to work on this if they're still working. And if you need any more time at the end of that pause, we will give you more time. Also, anybody with questions, feel free to raise your hand or reach out in the chat. And I'm going to select it. And then I'll hit OK. And what that's going to do is change the title so that as we change the term, say we want to look into the past and we want to look at 2019 all, it's going to change the value represented here. This is helpful for taking screenshots, doing presentations, but really it just makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner, and a little bit more clear what you're looking at as you make these changes. I'm going to publish this once again, saving my progress. All right, and that is the end of task 2, although that one was pretty easy. So I think we're going to continue on directly into task 3. And here we're going to customize the tooltip, and that's where we're going to add a certain bit more information and functionality to what we're doing here. So over here in the marks card, if you look, one of the buttons says tooltip. If you were to click on that, it opens up a pop-up window and you can see essentially just all of the fields that we've added to the view are in the tooltip. And they're in there in kind of a messy capacity. They're not really formatted in a way that's easy to look at, and they're just using the field names that are in the data source. One of the things that okay. I'm going to pause it, actually. Apparently, some of us were not able to follow along. I'm going to close out of that window.
Oh, that's the one. No, right there. It's not showing. Oh, well, so you don't have, so we have to click something and drag the filter. So click the term. So go down here.
You can actually just type in the search bar, you type term and it'll be.
Okay, so one of the questions in the chat was, how did we change the title to make it update alongside the term filter? So what I'm going to do is right click the title, just anywhere in this title box, and I'm going to click edit title. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to pretend like we haven't done this yet. So I'm going to type a space, and then I'm going to type the word term. I'm going to center it, which is personal preference. And then up here at the top, if you see this drop-down box, this says insert. If you click that, you're met with a handful of different options, but what you really want to do is go down here to term and select term. Now you could obviously select any of these others. The point is, it's going to basically place this reference to this whatever field you choose into the text box. And then as that value of that field changes, you're going to see the actual title change. So once you've inserted term, and also to be clear, you see how it's typed out with a less than and then a greater than. If you were to do that just with the text, it would work all the same, assuming you are typing the field name exactly as it's listed in the data source. So now that I've done that, I'm going to click OK. You can also click Apply, but OK applies and closes the window. And now you can see it updates along with the term filter that we have shown here.
These are shield.
Right. His date.
Replace this with.
When, you know, something that will make 01 winter or whatever. So you can, so if it weren't already in the data set, you could actually create calculations to replace it. Because here actually do have different weights, but I think the areas have it.
Like instead of 2023-08, have 2023-08, look up that maps it to also.
Yeah, you would probably just be.
Okay, so you do it
Yeah, but since we're access, he worked without granted access, but that one.
So we're going to go ahead and move on now. And before I totally start modifying the tooltip here, like we talked about, I want everybody to take a moment and look to the very right of the list report, just after full-time, part-time. You're going to see ABC, and that's the default whenever you make a list report. That's the mark type. This is actually the mark. And when you hover over it, you'll notice you're presented with a tooltip. And as I mentioned before, it's just taking, by default, the fields we've added to the view and just throwing them in there. But I think one of the things that we want to do is make it look a little nicer and work a little bit better. We already have all of this information about the student right there in front of us. We don't really need to see it again. So first thing I'm going to do is change the type of mark. Over here in the marks card, I'm going to select this drop down that currently says automatic. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select shape, and it changes it, in my case, to this little donut. From there, I'm going to click on the shape button, which has now appeared since we've selected shape as a mark type. And I'm not going to overcomplicate it, but I'm just going to select a full diamond. And then if under the marks card, you click on the size button, there's now a slider. You can raise that up, you can lower it down, and it's self-explanatory, but you are adjusting the size of the mark. Make it a little bit bigger. Finally, I'm going to click the color button. I'm going to change the color to something that looks a little bit more like a GT color. Of course, course, if you want to use the exact GT colors, we have those listed on Georgia Tech's website. All right, and now from here, we want to change what's actually showing up in the tooltip. To do that, you would click this tooltip button, and you see this pop-up box. There's plenty of different options here. Without really explaining too much, I'm going to uncheck these bottom two checkboxes, allow selection by category and include command buttons. They just aren't necessary for what we are doing here today. And above that, you see Show Tooltips. If you were to uncheck that, tooltips would be completely off. So leave that checked if you're trying to use them. And the drop-down directly next to that has two options. You have responsive and you have hover. The main difference being responsive is polling your cursor to see where it is at all times. It's looking to see if you are on the tooltip. If you move it down, it moves the tooltip down with you. And I'll show you that. A lot of times I like to use on hover, but in the testing of this demo, I found responsive to be the best way to go about this. So we are going to delete everything that's in here. Again, we don't care about this. We've already learned this information. We're going to delete it all. We're going to hit OK. And then if you look over on the pill shelf to the left, we're going to scroll down, and let's say we want to know some test scores about these students. We are going to grab ACT composite score, SAT math, and SAT verbal. And we're going to drag those over the tooltip button and the marks card, and we're going to release. Again, we'll do that for all three of those fields. Now that we've done that, you click the tooltip and you notice they're not there. They don't automatically show up when you add them to the tooltip in that way. What you're doing is giving yourself the option. And now that they're there, you can add them much the same way that we added the term field to the title. So you'll select Insert, this drop down up here, and you will look for your fields. We're going to select ACT first. I'm going to hit Enter. SAT Math, Enter. SAT Verbal, and then hit OK. And what you notice now is whenever you hover over the tooltip, the mark for a given row, a given student ID, you're now met with some numbers that are representing those test scores. But what test scores are these? I don't know. You wouldn't know unless you had given it some kind of notation. So here, we're actually going to go back to the tooltip, and we're going to type out what each thing is. We're going to put a colon and a space after that. Yeah. And then we're going to hit Enter, or OK. So now as you hover over, you at least know what you're looking at. But you'll notice some of these don't have values. This first student right here doesn't have an ACT composite score. And the only reason you really know that is because there's nothing there. The other two have a score of 550 for SAT math and 470 for their verbal. But I don't believe there's decimal points in those. There's not supposed to be. So one of the things that I'd like to do is make a calculated field to clean up the way that these scores look as they come into this tooltip. Over here on the left, I'm going to click this downward facing arrow on the pill shelf. I'm going to click Create Calculated Field. I'm going to name this first one ACT Composite. Score for tooltip. And then we're going to go ahead and start writing some logic for this calculated field. We're going to use the if null function. And before we even do that, I'd like you to notice over here in the calculated field text box, towards the right side, there is an arrow pointing to the right. If you click that, you have this helpful little info box. And from here, you can search possible functions, and you can also look at different categories. If you click on one of them, it's going to explain a little bit about the syntax, try to tell you how it works, and give you a couple of examples. So type in that little search box, if null. And here you can see how it works. What this expression is going to do is check something that we give it. If it's null, it's going to return another expression that we specify. If it's not, it's going to return the original expression. So relatively straightforward. And the reason we're doing this again is we don't want a blank instance, a null instance to show up on the tooltip. We want it to be a little bit more clear. So I'm going to start typing if null, and you'll notice a little window pops up and it wants to finish that for you. So you can either click on that with your mouse, you can hit return or enter, and it will do that. And you also don't have to do that. It will still work whether it's in caps, whether it's not, as long as you've typed it out correctly. When you do that, it's going to give you an automatic 2 parentheses, an opening and a closing. And this is where we're going to put the first bit of logic. So the field that we're trying to perform this calculation on is the ACT composite score. So I'm going to, again, start typing that. And again, you met with a handful of different options. You want ACT composite score, we're just going to hit enter. And then we're going to hit comma. And what do we want to return when it's null? We want to return some sort of text that's letting everybody know, hey, they didn't take this test, or we don't have these scores for this student. So I want to return text. I'm going to use a single or a double space, and I'm going to type my text. And then we're going to end with another single or double space, matching the first one. Now you would think that we're done. But you see down below, the calculation contains errors. If you were to click on that text or that dropdown, it'll try to give you an explanation of what it is that's going wrong. It's not always entirely helpful, but I find often it's more helpful than most error messages that you're going to get. And this one in particular is telling us that we are calling 2 different types of data when really they need to match. So NA is text, it's a string. So in order to make these match, we're going to convert this composite score into a string first. And so to do that, we're going to add another function within this if null function. I'm going to select the space just to the right of the opening parentheses and before the ACT composite score, and I'm going to type the letters STR. Again, that shows you a little pop-up, and you're going to want to click that. That is the string function. Like I said, that's going to convert whatever field you type inside of it into a string. And wrap that in a parentheses. And now it's happy. The calculation is valid. I'm going to hit apply to save it. And I'm going to leave this screen up so anyone can look at it as they work. I think now is a good stopping point to take maybe 5 minutes so that everybody can catch up if they need.
At the same time. Straight change the text. To the text. Straight so they have
So how do we get back up?
So. Your search engine is very good. Apparently, a way to find me. I want to know if you're not made to feel anything.
That is expensive.
Have you added it to your tooltip yet?
that's what I actually
Instead of going to the data store,
They're like, we don't want to touch it, so should we do that with? Like, I use some of your light data enrollments, but I guess I wasn't told from someone not to mess with the AAC, like, because it messes up some of your stuff. So, from the data, so you want me to?
you can once you download the workbook.
Oh, because I'm not downloading, it's live data.
Yeah, when you download the workbook and then you just publish it, it's gonna be published. You wanted to see the data source.
Even live data?
Take my time and create everything around.
Created the field that we were just talking about.
Take a seat. Yeah, first they install everything and then they have a The screen is blacked out. It happens again.
They know that I don't have
Just trying to explain like it works.
All right, hopefully everybody's caught up to that point, and we're going to continue onward.
Right.
So this first calc field that we've made, I'm going to click OK. I'm going to save that calc field. And you'll notice it's at the top here and it's in blue, and you see an equal sign and an ABC directly to the left of it. Two things there. The ABC is noting that it is a text field now, which we've made it into. And the equal sign is making it very clear it's a calculated field. It's a calculation that we've either created ourselves within this workbook, or one that was created in a Tableau data source before being published and pushed to you. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the original ACT composite score, except with our newly created calc field. We're going to click and drag it over the tooltip button and release. And again, it doesn't automatically add it. We have to do that ourselves. So I'm going to click the tooltip button. I'm going to open up that text box, and I'm going to replace, I'm going to highlight the original composite score field we had inserted, and I'm going to click insert once again. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to see this ATTR that stands for attribute, ACT composite score for tooltip. That is the field we made, and I'm going to click that and insert it in place of it. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now when you hover over, you see this first student who didn't have a score now returns NA for their ACT composite score. It's at least making it a little bit more clear to us that we do not have that score, rather than something has gone wrong. And I'm going to do the same thing, excuse me, the same thing for the other two scores. One of the easy things that you can do, though, once you've got something like this scenario we have, where we want to do the exact same thing to the other two, if you right-click or click this drop-down and click Duplicate, we now have an exact copy of that calc field we just made. And it's going to list it, and it's going to give it an extra bit of text saying that it's a copy. We're going to edit that. We're going to change the name of this to SAT Math. SAT Math score for tooltip. And then with the box open still, we're going to scroll down on the pill shelf until we find that field, that SAT Math score field. And we're going to drag it. And if you kind of position it just over the ACT composite score field, you see it get highlighted orange. And if you release, boom, it's just going to replace it right then and there. And now you have the same field, or essentially the same function, being performed on a different field. Okay. And do it once more for that last score.
It's a problematic one. I just got it a month ago, and then after the image, it blacked out. The image, they just gave it to me 10 days ago. Okay, I'm gonna do it.
And again, follow that same line of thinking. We're going to add those newly created fields to the tooltip.
Same as you. I have nothing to you. I should bring the second one.
Now, any instance of these scores that returns a null is going to return the text NA. And in addition to that, we don't even have to go in and format these as numbers because now they're no longer numbers, they're text, which means it's automatically changing a 410.0 to just 410. And now that we don't no longer need these three original fields, we can drag them off. And there's a handful of different places that you can drag a field to in Tableau in order to remove it. Most of the time, it's anywhere that you see blank space. So here, you see when you hover over this with the field, there's a little box and a red X. That means we're removing it from the worksheet. And I'm going to save via publishing. And that's task 4. Again, I'm going to give everybody a little bit more time to catch up if they are not. We'll start again at maybe 10:15 or so.
So I can now return the loaner one. Hold them as I'll test out for another couple of weeks.
So, looks like you got the calculator. So let's do an edit on that.
An edit. Okay.
So that looks correct. So you hit okay. Now you'll drag that field onto it.
Yeah.
Drag that to where it's
That is me.
But add the other calculations to there. So now, if I want to see just the calculations you've created, so do the filter. To calculation. Now, so here's the calculation created to view. Okay, so this is one of the
shapes over there. You still need to have a other solution come back to it.
Need to be the
That's the way it's not.
Okay, so there's an issue, which actually take away here. So if you pulled it in directly from the data page, it would not have sum. It's only from the sum because we actually pulled it from where it had the sum. We don't want it to have sum. That's easy to forget. Yeah, we just tell it to delete sum. And then you need to change your title. So get rid of the copy change.
So you get the rows and columns.
English, it'll go coming up. Well, actually, no, it's not quite done. You gotta change the name, so you just drop that.
I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong to people.
It's not authorized.
Yeah, we actually need to change the ACT because I think that's the field we use. Yeah, so do a version of it. It's still the citizen. It's actually changed to, this should be, yeah, so this actually should be composite. So we just need to change this one to ACT composite.
Because right now it's showing each department.
You're adding in one number.
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
right, yeah.
That's why it's working.
It's actually this.
Because notice when you changed it here, it actually changed it where it would add in the table as well. So now we have the composites, we just need to bring over. And then we can release. So you right.
So let's
Okay, so just for a second, because it pulls out the tooltip, it took away all your tooltip. So let's go ahead and back up. Back in your tooltip.
Yeah, I think some of us are still working here, so we'll make it a little bit longer.
It's to save you from having to retype. Did you not do your? Oh, okay. So that's why I was there. If you had to, it should have said missing. I do it. If you had, the insert, I'll show you what happens when you just remove to a. Okay. So now, if you had a tooltip and then you remove the field, it should switch to red and saying that it's a missing field.
So, says publish.
Okay, no, just took it away. So sometimes if it's reliant on a field and you take that field away out of the view, it would then switch to a red saying field missing. But in this case, it just took it away. But yeah, so now you would just want to create your tooltip switch.
Oh, save here.
Column.
File. Oh, okay. Save. Oh, you cannot save because you're at web version. If you're desktop version.
Oh, actually, no, that's right. It's this way. So you want to do attributes.
Right, but if you're desktop version, you can save it to your desktop.
This is a web.
And you can rearrange these if you want to edit in order. But then now you go in and put your text. So now that you have all of them in, now you go to the left of them and write whatever text that you want to show up.
Thank you. I think
I'll follow on hers because my formulas aren't correct. So.
Okay, I'm going to continue on here to task number 5. So for this one, we're going to actually create a new sheet. We're going to start creating an entirely new visualization. So downwards towards the bottom where you see your enrollment list sheet, if you look to the right of that, you're going to see 3 different icons. The first one is a little square with some bars vertically in it, and that is the button that creates a new worksheet. We're going to click that. And now you see we're on sheet 2. We're going to change the name of sheet 2 as we did before. Right click it, and you're going to rename it. So we're going to call this enrollment trends. And we're going to start this off by making another calculated field that we're going to use within this. So in the left panel, once again, we're going to click this downward facing arrow, and we're going to create a calculated field. And what we're trying to create here is a count of the number of students so that we can utilize that to determine how many people are here in any given point of time, and really slice it by any other type of filter as well. So I'm going to call this student count. And we're going to call the count distinct function, which is count D. We'll hit enter. And then we're going to drag the ID field, which we're using as a student ID, into the middle of those parentheses. So each time this function encounters a distinct ID, it's going to count it, essentially giving us a student count. And we're going to hit OK there. And now we're going to add that to our view. So I'm going to drag student count, and I'm going to put it in the rows. And then I want some sort of time component to this. We could use term, but to simplify this and make everything a little bit more palatable, I'm going to use term academic year. Term acad year. And I'm going to put that in the columns. All right, and you can tell you've only added 2 things here to the rows and the columns, but Tableau is already trying to figure out what it is you want to do. And it's formatting this as a bar chart. In my case, that is not what I want. I want to show movement over time. And I'm going to select under the marks card, I'm going to select line. And then finally, after doing that, I'm going to select the label option in the marks card. I'm going to click that button, and I'm going to select the box that says Show Mark Labels. And when I do that, each point corresponding to one of the term academic years is now given a label, a more specific note saying exactly how many students have been counted for that year. And again, I'm going to go into the tooltip, and I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. All right, so this one's going to be really straightforward. That's really all we're looking to do here. And from here, we've finished both of our sheets. These are the sheets that we're going to use to add to a dashboard. And before I really go forward with that, I want to differentiate the two. The sheet is where you're pulling in data directly. You're manipulating it, you're filtering it, you're changing how it looks. And this is ultimately where you build the visualization. But when it comes to a dashboard, that's where you're housing your sheets. And you're able to format and play around with the look, the feel, and the functionality a lot more than you are able to do so in the sheets. So down once here again at the bottom of this window, I'm going to click that middle icon. It is a square with 4 smaller squares inside of it. And that's going to open up a new dashboard. From here on the left side, you see a couple of different things. You can resize the actual dashboard window. I'm not really going to mess with that right now, but feel free. You can test it, how it would look on a given device. You can switch over to the Layout tab, which we will do a little bit, I think. But first, you'll notice there's sheets. So these are the available sheets that are on our workbook. And these are what we can grab and drag onto this space right here to add them to our dashboard. And then directly underneath that, you have a section called Objects. There's a bunch of different ones, I'm not going to talk too much about horizontal and vertical just because they can get confusing. It's good to learn how to use them in order to space things correctly and move things around and keep like things next to each other. Text boxes, pretty self-explanatory. You can add images, which you can do a handful of different things with. You can use it almost like a button. Web pages, workflows. You also have blank. You can just create a blank object to add spacing in certain areas. You can use navigation buttons, download buttons, extensions, and a Tableau function called Ask Data. Underneath that, you see tiled and floating. That is telling you what type of object you're going to bring out. If you have tiled selected, Tableau is going to automatically try to fit it into the space. Floating is doing just that. It's going to float it anywhere you want to put it. So we're going to grab the trend sheet from over here in the sheets, enrollment trends, and much like you would with a field, drag it over and drop it into that blank space in the middle. And what we're going to do here, if you don't see this outline around this sheet now, you just want to click it anywhere inside the sheet, or you can also select enrollment trends over here in the Sheets tab. Once you see that, there's some icons up here that pop up. And we're going to select this downward pointing arrow. We're going to deselect title. We do not want to show title in this instance. And there's a reason for that. We're going to be able to add our own and space things a little bit differently. But before we do that, I'm going to change the way this scale works. So over here, you'll notice if you hover over the left side where the student count numbers are, it kind of highlights it gray. And if you right click in here, you get the option, a couple of different options, but mainly the option to edit the axis, which is what we're going to select. In here, again, lots of different options. You want to be careful. It's really easy to be over here with your mouse, click, and then like that, accidentally select logarithmic. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave these alone. What we are going to do is select fixed, and we're just going to change this to start at a different number and end at a different number. So we've modified our scale a little bit. And then over here on the tick marks, you do not have to do this. Oh, actually, they're good already. And again, if you need to edit the axis over here, you'll hover over it, right click, and select Edit Axis. I'll leave this up for a little bit. Yeah, so again, under the range, under tick mark, oh, well, actually, sorry, no, I actually didn't need to change tick marks. I really want it to be every 1,000, and it already is doing that automatically. If it does change, you can go in and do that yourself. It's not required, but it does clean up the look a little bit to not have a ton of tiny little tick marks running around. Yes.
I did or didn't.
So now I'm going to go under the objects. I'm going to go under the objects, and I'm going to grab text, and I'm going to leave it on tiled. So I'm going to grab a text object, I'm going to hover over here, and this is where things can go terribly wrong. You want to leave it as high up as you can, but there's really the tiniest amount of pixels you can actually hover over that do this. But you want that tiny sliver shaded up at the top, and that's when you want to release. You may not notice much of a difference if you do it any other way, but the more you develop into a dashboard, the more cumbersome it can potentially become. Just something to keep in mind. So it's going to grab a pop-up box and ask you what kind of text you want to put in here. This is where we're going to put the actual header, the title, whatever you want to call it, for this dashboard. And again, it's an enrollment trend. I'm just going to call it enrollment trends over time.
Story again, I looked away. Okay.
It's not usable.
Oh, it's kind of where you seeing them now?
No, for story. So it's visible under story, but not in the dashboard.
If you go one box. Yeah, somebody over here, you guys. So he's actually in the list. You just can't see it because. And then the little bit.
Just get that.
Yeah, so
Something
That's what I thought it might be under it. So that's why I was trying to click on it. So it's actually going to be.
I got confused on this, so I was looking at the wrong mouse, and I completely missed it.
We found a bug. Hey, good job. Thank you.
Okay, that's rendering. All right.
I'm not even sure what it is.
I have no idea.
No, I didn't.
I'm thinking so I don't know exactly good, but look at
Okay, so click that. No, don't click that.
Okay, so that essentially, it's going to take the whole page.
And within that, you want to draw.
Like
And then you can upsize it.
what these don't have all the browser stuff, so take up space. So it's going to take up the whole.
As long as there's a
click here, and so we
exactly. As long as there's a common link.
when you see the gray, that's what's going to carry to the left of the chart.
And so now
they're directed chart. Here is going to drop it below the chart. Oh, it's red. Okay,
Scroll down.
and then because there's a filter that goes over here. You know, it's like.
No, just.
And without the filter. Now, a lot of times when you want to, and it won't show up, is you so here. In here.
And that's for like the client.
And I don't know if he did anything other than that.
Right. Stop. Make her stop. Just kidding.
You guys okay?
We're just having fun.
But even on his top windows, I don't know if his top.
So what happened?
I don't know.
You drag the table too, right?
We were working with the not being able to see screens. So is your top window? Is that just a text box, or is that?
It's a text.
They did that.
No, it's the way the page is rendering on the small screen here. Enrollment trends sheet is actually below enrollment, but the section is condensed. So zooming out in the browser, less than 100%, zooming out to like 60%. You see it.
Text.
Yeah. One person had a tiny little vertical scroll bar, but
It's there right now. We don't really know.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, we're trying to make it look like the exact same experience. Ways of doing it.
Right. This is Tableau art now. I know, this is the fun part. I just like to see what it does.
Okay, so I'm gonna now continue with this text object here. This is the title.
Oh, it takes so.
You want it to be a little bit bigger than it is. So I'm gonna do 18 font, and I'm gonna center it. Now clearly this is far too big. I'm gonna grab this bottom border, and once again, if this isn't selected somehow, you just click anywhere in this box, it will select it, and then grab this bottom border and drag up. Make it look how you want it to look. Okay, that's it for this first one.
If it's a sheet, just like that.
I'm going to rename these sheets so that it's clear to me that they're sheets. You do not have to do this. This is a preference.
Thank you. Show our clues. Okay, now let's see what that was. Look at that. It was for the one for check mark.
I'm going to make a new dashboard once again. I'm going to call this one enrollment list. And here I'm going to do the same thing I did last with the trends, except I'm going to choose this enrollment list sheet. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to drop it here. So this one came with another object, you'll notice. We had a filter that we had applied, and we'd also shown that filter. So when Tableau brings that sheet in, it thinks you want that automatically, it's going to bring that along with it. And we do want it. But we are going to move it around a little bit. We're going to make it look a little bit different than it is. I think the first thing, let's see. Yeah, we're going to change this very similar to the way that, oh, no, it's already a drop down, so that's good. We are going to modify the title here. If you'll double click the title, I'm going to right click, click this drop down and click edit filter. Not that either. We're going to click, it's somewhere in here. There it is. I'm going to make this look more like a normal word. So if you select that filter, you notice there's a little something that looks like a tab up here. And this is where you're going to click and hold to be able to drag this around. And I want to move this up. So again, holding until we're at the very top and you have a small sliver shaded. And you'll notice this 2028 term sheet, it doesn't go all the way to the end. The way to fix that is having the sheet selected, and you can do this, of course, with any object, but having the sheet selected at the toolbar at the top. If you look at this button right here, it looks like a square with some brackets around it. It's the fit, and we're going to click that drop down and move to fit width. And then we're going to resize these. Feel free to do so or not, just so we can read most of these. So now we have this. We want to do one last thing. We want to add a text box, just like we did in the other one. We want to add it above the term. And we're going to call this one, I believe, enrollment list. Around with the sizing of these objects, however you choose. All right, and now we're going to go back to the enrollment trends dashboard. Here we're going to do something called a dashboard action. So there's a handful of different dashboard actions, I think 5 or 6. To get there, you on the dashboard page, up at that top where you see File, Data, Worksheet, we're going to click on Dashboard. I'm going to scroll down and select Actions. And this is what we see. So we're going to leave this right here where we want this acting on this workbook. And we are going to select the drop-down Add Action. This is where you're met with the different types of actions you can set on the dashboard. And all we're going to do today is go to Sheet. Although you can see here there's a filter where if you click, hover, or however you set it up, you can filter other views based on the view you're clicking on. There's Highlight, which is very similar to Filter, but instead of filtering something out, it just highlights the things you want to see. There is Go to URL, Go to Sheet, Change Parameter, and Change Set Values. So we're going to select Go to Sheet. And we're going to title this View Student List. We're going to leave the source sheets as they are on enrollment trends. This is where we want this action to happen, or at least where we want to initiate the action. And then over here on the right, you see Run Action On. This is setting up the behavior of the action. So we don't want this action to happen unless the user specifically decides they want to. So we're going to select Menu, and I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. And then Target Sheet, we want it to navigate to the list. And once you've made all those selections, you can select OK. You see now we have our newly created dashboard action. You can edit an existing one, and you can remove it as well. Once you're done with that, hit OK again. So what does that actually do? What does that look like? If you hover over any of these points where you have a tooltip and select, click on it, you'll notice a new option pop up. It says View Student List. Now that you've done that, you can click that as if it's a link, and it will take you to that student list. And now that we're here, obviously we can look at different terms and view the students that make up those enrollment trends over time. But what if we want to go back? We are going to do another little navigation trick. Rather than use a dashboard action this time, we're going to use a button. And that's down here at the bottom in the objects section. It looks like navigation. So for this one, we're going to actually turn this into a floating object. So click floating, and then grab navigation and drop it. I'm going to put mine up here. I'm going to make this a little bigger. And once I've got it put roughly where I want it, I'm going to click that drop down once again, and I'm going to edit this button. So there's a couple of options. Firstly, we want to say, where do we want to navigate to? We want to make sure we do not navigate to the sheet. We want to navigate to the other dashboard. And we want that one that we want to go to is trends. So we're going to select trends right there. And then you have the option to select a button style. You can do text or image. Oftentimes, image is, I would say, better looking, but you do have to find the right image. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to stick with text, and we're going to say, return to trends. I'm going to change the background of this button once again to be kind of gold. You feel free to add a tooltip if you want. This is only going to show up if you hover over the navigation button. It is not required, but hit OK there. And now we have a button. So in order to see how this works in Web Edit as you're still editing the dashboard, you would want to hold down, I believe it's Option on a Mac and Control, I want to say, on a Windows machine as you're hovering over the button, and then click. Alt. Okay, thank you. All right, that's literally it. But nobody's finished. You can keep working. Feel free to ask any questions like we've been doing, and see if you can finish this one off. I give some time before the end where we're going to offer some time for questions. They do not have to be related to this demonstration. They can be related to anything having to do with developing in Tableau. And don't forget to publish. Once we've made this publish as, or rather just publish. And once you've done that, you can look within the demo folder in Demo Sandbox QA, and you can find your dashboard. So once you find it, Tableau University Live Demo, you can click on it, and you can view, start with trends, and see how it actually look in a published format. Make sure all of your actions work. Make sure your filters work. Tool tips. Button. All right, so that wraps everything up. I hope this was helpful. I tried to include a pretty wide variety of things that you can do and a pretty wide range of complexity. Of course, it can get a lot more difficult than this, but hopefully you all will have left here feeling like you can be onboarded and create your own things in Tableau. Oh yeah, there's another session this afternoon. What time is it, Andre? 2:30 in the same room. And you want to be there for that as well, because I think Andre is going to do a good bit more advanced things in that. So again, thank you guys all for coming, and we appreciate it.